Decay of Logos is the love child between Breath of the Wild and a Souls-esque game. However, both being fairly unique genres in themselves, it begs the question that after being put together, does it work? Well, after putting in a considerable amount of time into the game, I'd like to shed some light on the good and the bad. The trouble with that is that I'm incredibly undecided on my own opinion of this game. After being a few hours in, it's hard to pinpoint where I stand on it, and I think it's easy to discuss the pros and the cons that led me to this crossroads. So you play as a young elven character who's accompanied by a mysterious white elk companion. The core gameplay focuses around yourself and the elk proceeding through various regions of the cursed world and uncovering what was the cause of destruction of your village. While this is vague, and in my opinion obviously so, it provides a unique and open experience. This particular gameplay style is what birthed my love for the Breath of the Wild. This point is a little confusing, so let me explain. When you start in Breath of the Wild, you awaken a cave knowing very little direction, except that there is an evil presence and it is your duty to awake and stop it. No more, no less. However, that lack of information doesn't stop the player from leaving the cave and either being able to explore the world for themselves or just bullet rushing it straight to the evil castle seen in the distance. Which, by the way, are both things that you can do and complete the game with. The beauty of this start is just that, the player's choice. The adventure, while it could be described as narratively lacking, I would much rather describe it as undirected. You as the player choose the pace of the game, and you choose to learn, or not learn, as you go ahead. This particular experience is really rare. It seems clear that Decay of Logos was obviously greatly inspired by the core gameplay and storytelling of Breath of the Wild. However, it then brings in soul elements to the progression by adding rather difficult and slow combat that has to be treated carefully because a death sends the player mercilessly back to the previous checkpoint, much like the bonfires in Dark Souls. Now, if I'm honest, the combat is what I dislike most about this game. There's not much to say about it, and to be honest, its simplicity is really the root cause of its issue. While I think the combat was purposely slow, it comes across as clunky at times, with quite static controls and little variance in the attacks. Enemy types seem varied at the beginning of the experience, but once you're a few hours in, the enemies become quite repetitive and, as such, easier to predict and defeat. The game has a few different types of weapons, which is nice at the beginning, but the weapons allow multiple playstyles. But at the end of the day, most boil down to either relying on a heavy or light attack spam. For instance, if you have a fist weapon, you're going to be using the light attacks far more than the heavy attacks, and if you're using a two-handed weapon, then you're going to be using the heavy attacks far more than the light attacks. While this does add variance to itself, it boils down to two different combat types, and in my personal opinion, is more of an illusion of variance. The only other gripe I had with this game is the goddamn elk. Fuck this stupid beast. The elk is portrayed as this helping hand companion aiding you across your journey as a mount and a battle companion, when in reality it serves as a glorified paperweight. To begin with, the game tells you that the elk is stressed and as a result goes incredibly slow speeds while mounted, making it literally worthless to ride anywhere. Look at this. But the game then insists that by feeding and interacting with it, you build a relationship and a bond that's increasing its speed and value to you. In reality, this is not the case at all. In reality, the elk is there to assist you through a few object-oriented puzzles scattered throughout the world, which mostly boil down to it just standing on a pressure plate and opening a door. This is frustrating to me mostly because I was fine with the elk being included as some kind of mysterious plot piece, but it seems as though the devs just decided to throw in a few random game mechanics to include the elk in the gameplay. At most, the elk provides you with some good storage and funny moments where it randomly freaks out and charges past you, or just ominously stares at you while you get your ass kicked by demons. At most, the elk just slows down the game mechanics, and it's a real shame. On that note, the art style and general presence of the game is great. It's simplistic but effective for what it's trying to convey. It's also not so stylized that it could turn people away. I think any could easily appreciate this game and that it looks nice. So hey, at least the elk looks cool. Now, like I touched on before, where this game shines is the undirected exploration, which, let me be clear, is not for everyone, but it also isn't done much within gaming. This is a sort of subgenre that's arisen within RPGs, and most RPGs, with no hate intended, normally bog you down with narrative direction, leaving little for you as the player to discover. But if you can get past the general grievances you may have with the combat, the unique experience you get out of the game fills a void that hadn't been filled for me since Breath of the Wild. While I'm not saying this game is the next Breath of the Wild, as I've mentioned, its combat is definitely slow, it's clunky, and the game definitely has its faults. But overall, I believe that for the price tag of less than 20 quid, you get a unique and fun experience, and it touches on a subgenre of gaming that isn't given much attention. While I wouldn't say it's for the average RPG player, I would argue that anyone craving a Breath of the Wild-like experience should try it out. So, this brings me back to my previous crossroads. How do I rate this game? Well, for myself, a solid void filler, and a time sink that left me content. Is it perfect? No. Is it Breath of the Wild? No. But I don't think it tries to market itself as a clone, and it isn't one. It's a nice, small adventure game with some challenging combat thrown in. So for you as the consumer, if it's something you're looking for, pick it up and try. Overall, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I also wanted to mention that when I was finishing this video up, I looked over some other sources that also got to play the game early, and it seems as though a couple of the people had some issues related to performance. While I didn't, I had full 60 FPS without a single crash. It seems as though a lot of other people, mostly on the console versions, did experience some issues. However, the devs have come forward and they've identified this, and they claim that there's a day one patch heading for the game that supposedly is going to fix these issues. But just a heads up. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. As always, head to the Discord if you want to discuss this further, and I'd love to hear from you.